What if the saddest story in the entire Cars universe isn't about a race that was lost, but about a life that was erased? We've all seen Cars. We've laughed, we've cheered, we've teared up a little, okay, maybe a lot, when that iconic blue Hudson Hornet rolls onto the screen. Doc Hudson is grumpy, mysterious, and brilliant. He's the kind of character you immediately know has a story buried somewhere deep beneath that rusty hood, and the movie gives us pieces of it, enough to understand him, enough to feel for him, but not enough. Because when you pull back the curtain, when you really sit with the details of who Doc Hudson was, what happened to him, and how the world treated him afterward, you realize that Cars contains one of the most quietly devastating character arcs ever put in an animated film. This isn't just a theory. This is the sad, painful truth about Doc Hudson, and once you see it, you cannot unsee it. So let's go back, all the way back, before Radiator Springs, before the rust in the silence and the locked garage, back to when Doc Hudson wasn't just a small-town doctor. He was the fastest thing on four wheels. His full name was Dr. Hudson Hornet, and he didn't just race, he dominated. 3 Piston Cup championships. 3. In the world of Cars, that is a legacy that should echo through eternity. He was graceful, he was powerful, and he was beloved. Crowds filled the stands just to watch him move. He wasn't competing for trophies. He was competing because it was who he was, woven into the very steel of his frame. Racing wasn't something Doc did. Racing was something Doc was. Think about what that means for a moment. When you are so completely defined by something, when your entire identity, your joy, your sense of self, lives inside one thing. What happens when that thing is taken away? That's not a question Cars asks out loud. But it answers it anyway. In every bitter word Doc snaps at lightning, in every shadow that crosses his headlights when the subject of racing comes up. In the way he keeps those Piston Cup trophies locked away in a garage he can barely bring himself to enter. Doc Hudson was one of the greatest to ever do it. And then, in a single, terrible moment, he wasn't. The crash happened fast. That's how they always happen, isn't it? One second everything is fine. The next, the world is unrecognizable. Doc's accident during a race left him wrecked. Badly. And while the details are kept just vague enough in the film to let our imagination fill the gaps, what we do know is this. The recovery was long, grueling, the kind of process that tests not just your body but your soul. Doc poured everything he had into getting back. He fought to come back. And here's where the knife twists. When Doc Hudson had finally healed, when he had clawed his way back from the wreckage and was ready to return to the thing that gave his life meaning, the racing world had already moved on. He showed up, ready to race, ready to reclaim his place on that track, and found that his sponsors had already signed someone new. His seat was taken. His name was fading from the conversation. He wasn't celebrated for his comeback. He wasn't honored for his legacy. He was simply replaced. Can you imagine that? Can you sit with that for just a moment? You dedicate your life to something. You become legendary. You suffer the worst moment of your existence, and you survive it. You fight through it. And when you come back with your head held high, ready to continue the story of your life, nobody saved you a seat. The racing world didn't wave him back in. They didn't retire his number with ceremony and tears and cheering fans. They didn't even say goodbye properly. They just looked away. They looked toward the next shiny, fast thing. And Doc Hudson, 3-time Piston Cup champion, the Hudson Hornet, one of the greats, quietly disappeared from the sport that was supposed to be his home forever. That kind of rejection doesn't just hurt, it hollows you. And so Doc Hudson did what a lot of people do when the world they loved turns its back on them. He ran. He found the most forgotten corner of the map, a little town called Radiator Springs, right there on Route 66, bypassed by the new interstate, slipping out of memory just like he was. And he hid. He became a doctor. He helped the cars around him. He put away the trophies, shut the garage door, and he tried, really tried, to be someone new. But you can't just stop being who you are, no matter how many doors you close. Here's what nobody talks about enough. The psychological weight of what Doc Hudson carried. Sports psychologists, and yes, we're applying real human concepts to animated Cars because the emotions are real even if the characters aren't, will tell you that forced retirement from athletic identity is one of the most disorienting experiences a person can go through. When your sense of self is built around performance, around speed, around winning, losing that doesn't just change your schedule, it changes who you are. Doc didn't just lose a career, he lost his identity, and the way it happened, not through a graceful farewell but through being silently discarded, meant that he never got closure. There was no final lap, no victory parade, No moment where he got to say goodbye to the sport on his own terms. He was erased. And erasure leaves wounds that don't close cleanly. Watch his face, his eyes. When he talks about racing in the movie, there's grief there. Deep, old grief. The kind that has been sitting so long, it has become part of the furniture. He's not just angry at Lightning for being reckless and arrogant. He's angry because Lightning reminds him of what he was, of what he lost, of a version of himself that the world threw away. And underneath the anger, there is love. Undeniable, unextinguished love for the sport, for the speed, for the feeling of tires on asphalt and the roar of an engine pushed to its absolute limit. You don't lock your trophies in a garage because you hate them. You lock them away because looking at them hurts too much. And then Lightning McQueen crashes into Radiator Springs, loud, arrogant, blindingly fast, and utterly convinced that he doesn't need anyone. Sound familiar? Doc sees himself in Lightning immediately, not just in the speed or the talent, but in the loneliness, in the desperate, performative confidence that is really just armor over something fragile underneath. Lightning doesn't have real friends. He has fans, he has sponsors, he has cameras, but nobody who actually knows him, just like Doc before the crash. And maybe, just maybe, part of Doc's harshness toward Lightning isn't purely about resentment. Maybe it's warning. Maybe buried inside every gruff dismissal is a man trying to say, I have seen where this road goes, I have lived the ending of this story, and I do not want that for you. Because Doc couldn't save himself. The crash came too fast, the rejection cut too deep, and by the time he understood what he had lost, it was already gone. But Lightning still had a chance, still had time. So Doc teaches him. Reluctantly, stubbornly, grumpily, but he teaches him. He goes back into that world he swore he'd left behind, and he comes out of retirement to be Lightning's crew chief. And in doing so, something shifts in Doc too. Standing in that pit lane, headset on, watching a young racer fly around that track with everything he has, you can see it in Doc's face. He gets a little piece of it back. Not the glory, not the championships, not the years that were stolen from him, but something quieter and more important. Purpose. Connection. The feeling of being part of something that matters. Doc Hudson died before Cars 2. We don't see it happen. We just feel the absence of him, confirmed quietly, painfully, in the dedication at the film's end. And the racing world he left behind? It barely paused. That's the real tragedy, isn't it? Not just the crash, not just the rejection, but the fact that even in death, the world moved on quickly. Another race, another champion, another roaring crowd. The sport that once belonged to Doc Hudson kept spinning without him, just like it always had. But here in this little corner of the internet, we pause. We remember the Hudson Hornet. We remember those 3 championships earned with grit and grace. We remember the crash, the silence, the locked garage. We remember the bitter old doctor who loved racing so much that even after everything it did to him, he couldn't fully let it go. Doc Hudson's story is not just about a car, it's about everyone who ever built their world around a dream, and then had to figure out who they were when that dream was taken away. It's about the quiet grief of being forgotten by something you loved completely. And it's about the stubborn, beautiful resilience of finding meaning again, even when you've convinced yourself you don't deserve it. So the next time you watch Cars, and you see Doc Hudson slam that garage door, or whisper something hard and true to a young racer who isn't ready to hear it yet, remember what it cost him to be standing there. He was forgotten by the world, but he was never forgotten by the ones who mattered. And maybe, in the end, that's the only kind of legacy worth having.